So this is a follow-up to my last video where I discussed good value Canon prime lenses. I also have a good value Nikon lenses video as well. There are links to both of those right down below. Now I want to kind of give you the tips and tools that I use to determine whether or not a lens is a good value. Kind of just what am I looking for when I'm looking at a lens to determine whether or not it's a good value. And before we get into specifics about lenses, I want to talk a little bit about Amazon and Amazon's star rating system. It actually pretty closely mirrors my own thoughts on most lenses if you re-zero the system at 4 stars. What that means is a 4-star lens is not a very good lens. 4.5 stars, it's a good lens. 5 stars, it's a very good lens. Keep in mind though, if you see there's plenty of $100, or not plenty, but there are some 4.5 and 5-star $100, $150 lenses like the 51.8. And there are also $2,000 lenses that have 4.5 stars. Now, you can't look at both of those and say, oh, I'm going to get the same because they're the same rating. You're not going to get the same. What that rating is applied to is in that class or in that price range. So keep that in mind as you are shopping around on Amazon. But here are some more specifics to think about as you shop. Well, I think the first thing that we should talk about that's really important is the glass that you're shooting through. The more money you pay, usually, the higher quality the glass, and even more importantly in some cases, the coatings on that glass, ultra low dispersion, things like that. And basically, the better the glass allows for sharper quality images or sharper images, better color rendition straight out of the camera. If I was to shoot with a 70-200, this is a nice example of an expensive lens, about $2,000, high-end professional lens. The colors straight out of the camera shot through a lens like this are excellent compared to something like the 51.8. Even though the 51.8 is a great value and it's very sharp, the glass used in that is cheaper, it doesn't have any of the coatings, and you get just kind of flatter colors. Fixable in post, but it's really just kind of amazing, and this is why people who shoot with L lenses kind of revere them, and the same on the Nikon Pro side as well. So there's those. Now, those coatings help with things like chromatic aberration or controlling that, lens flare. Chromatic aberration is your purple and magenta fringing around high contrast areas, so you're shooting somebody backlit around the edge of them. You might see a little bit of purple. The cheaper the lens, usually the cheaper the lens coatings or non-existent lens coatings, and the more pronounced and noticeable that is. It's somewhat fixable in post, but higher quality lenses just take care of that, control it in the first place, and it's really nice to be able to not worry about shooting backlit subjects, because we've talked about that. It's also very nice to shoot backlit subjects, more pleasing than having them face the sun. Next category is build quality. So your budget level lenses, this is just a kind of a cheap kit lens from Tamron, all plastic construction, plastic lens mount. It's not really built to withstand years of use, or especially years of professional use. Just being used around town, gentle travel, family and friends, it's going to be fine. But everything on this is plastic, and it also has an AFM switch, and it does not have full-time manual focus. So when it's in autofocus, you can hear that the gears are engaged, and you should not be turning that. Professional level lenses, most of them allow full-time manual focus. You can autofocus with the camera and then reach over and adjust very quickly and slightly to get it just dialed in just where you want. It's also what kind of focus mechanism is it using? Is it using something like the ultrasonic or the silent wave motor? There are actually no gears engaged with the lens. It's just little pulses of ultrasonic sound that move it. It's pretty amazing. This is not that. This is actual gears, so you can hear them changing. There's ultrasonic and silent wave. That is one of the things that allows the full-time manual focus. A professional level lens is going to be metal construction or a lot more serious plastic. The very large focus and zoom rings to grab. Also, another thing is that the focus is completely internal. The lens is more sealed, and that allows it to be weather sealed. You get a little rubber seal at the end there too. And of course a metal mount. This is built to withstand a lot of professional use, be banged around, used seriously a lot. One of the ways to kind of tell how well built a lens is what is its resale value? And again, Amazon, eBay are both great for this. Take a look at used copies of the lenses you're looking for. If they are 15 to 20, more like if they're 20% less or 20% cheaper than a new copy, that is an indication that the value of that lens definitely decreases over time, and that is mostly because of its build quality. You just can't trust after 2-3 years that this lens is still in really good shape. Whereas if you look at a lot of the professional lenses, many of them sell for just 5, 10, maybe 15% under their new price. And so that's an easy way to kind of judge. One other feature that you should care about when you're shopping for lenses is the maximum aperture offered by that lens, and does that maximum aperture change over the zoom of the lens if it's a zoom lens. So this, again, this cheap example here is 3.5 to 5.6, and this is a great example. This is true of pretty much any non-fixed aperture zoom, and that is it goes from 3.5 at its widest, and as you zoom across the lens, that maximum aperture decreases to f of 5.6. So when you're at 80, 5.6. When you're at 28, it's 3.5. That's the same for the kit lens, 18 to 55 on both Nikon and Canon, and even the 18 to 135, and things like the 70 to 300. It's very common to go from 3.5 to 5.6. Actually, I think the 70 to 300 goes from 4.5 to 6.3. So you can see that out at the end of the zoom range, you are cutting a lot of light. It gives you less flexibility, it gives you less control over depth of field, and it cuts down the amount of light that you're getting to the sensor. This isn't a horrible thing by any means, but those are just three factors that three factors that are affected by your smaller maximum aperture. If you pay a lot of money, well, one, you can get a prime. You can see why primes are really good values, because a prime fixed focal length offers those really wide maximum apertures, of course across the range because they have no range. Or you can spend a ton of money to get something like this that does offer a fixed maximum aperture of f2.8 across the zoom range. So at 70, f2.8. At 200, f2.8. That's both nice for video work, because if you want to zoom, you don't have to change your exposure necessarily, because you can still work at the same aperture. But it's also just really nice in photography to have that much light gathering capabilities still all the way out at 200. So these are just some thoughts about lenses. When you're shopping for lenses, keep in mind looking at the build quality, maximum aperture, what is the resale value, what are people saying about it on Amazon as far as its used price goes, and you can use all of that to kind of judge whether or not a lens is going to be good for you. One of the things I didn't mention was IS. IS is pretty much in cheap lenses and more expensive lenses. You have to decide whether or not that's important to you. IS is certainly good in lower light situations when you have a lens that's maximum aperture changes, or even when you don't. But remember, it does not help capture moving people in sharp focus. It only helps you avoid shutter speed blur from handshake or handshake blur if your shutter speed drops too low. If you're shooting moving subjects, I often hear wedding photographers or beginning wedding photographers say, oh, I need IS for the reception, it's so low light in there. Well, most of what you're photographing at the reception is people moving around, dancing, having a good time, and IS doesn't really stop that. So you want a lens that is going to do well in low light and doesn't necessarily have IS. Sure, it's a bonus, but it doesn't help. So I hope this was helpful. If you have more questions about lenses, I'm going to follow this up very soon with a Canon zoom lens recommendation. And remember, when we say zoom lenses, we're not talking about lenses that telephoto lenses. We're talking about any lens that changes. Any lens that's not a prime basically is a zoom lens. Telephotos are ones that get you much closer to your subjects, and then of course wide angle are ones that are wider. And then you got your normal class, which is kind of your kit lenses in that general area. So I'll be talking about those specific lenses, good value ones, soon. But in the meantime, I hope this has given you some helps and tips for picking your own lens that's good for you. Thanks for watching.